If you ask most people where Mexicans come from, you'll get a simple answer: Mestizo, a mix of Spanish and Indigenous. It's the official story, the historical shorthand, the neat little box we use to categorize a nation of 130 million people. But the truth, as always, is far more complicated, far more beautiful, and far more revolutionary than the myth. The genetic history of Mexico is not a simple two-part equation. It is a four-dimensional tapestry woven over millennia, a story of epic migrations, brutal conquest, and silent survival. It is a story that forces us to confront the very idea of identity. And it's a story that is actively being rewritten by science right now. When geneticists map the DNA of the average Mexican, they don't find a single uniform blend. They find a vast, shifting landscape of ancestry. On average, the genetic makeup of the modern Mexican population is a tri-continental blend, roughly 56% Indigenous American, 40% European, and 4% African. But that average is a statistical ghost. It tells you nothing about the person standing in front of you. In the northern states, European ancestry can soar past 60%. In the southern states, Indigenous ancestry can dominate, often exceeding 80%. Before the arrival of Cortés, the land we now call Mexico was home to hundreds of distinct nations. The Mexica, also known as the Aztec, the Maya, the Zapotec, the Mixtec, the Purepecha, and, well, countless others. They spoke hundreds of languages and were separated by some of the most formidable geography on Earth: towering mountain ranges, vast deserts, and impenetrable jungles. This geographical isolation created a genetic substructure so profound that it actually persists to this day. A 2014 study published in Science found that the genetic differences between indigenous groups in Mexico are often greater than the differences between Europeans and Asians. When the Spanish arrived, they didn't conquer a unified empire. They conquered a mosaic of rival states. And here's the first genetic mystery. The pre-Columbian genetic map is still visible in the DNA of modern mestizos. Geneticists can trace the indigenous portion of a modern Mexican's DNA back to specific pre-Columbian groups, revealing a deep continuity that the historical record often obscures. The European contribution is overwhelmingly Spanish, but it is also a story of gender and conquest. Genetic studies of the Y chromosome, which is passed down from father to son, and mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from mother to child, tell two very different stories. The Y chromosome, which traces paternal lineage, shows a massive influx of European DNA, primarily Spanish. This is the genetic signature of the Conquista and the subsequent colonial period, a time when Spanish men arrived and intermixed with indigenous women. This pattern, high European paternal ancestry and high indigenous maternal ancestry, is a stark genetic reminder of the power dynamics of the colonial era. But, the European story is also more diverse than just Spain. The Spanish Empire was really a global enterprise. Within the European component, you actually find echoes of the Iberian Peninsula's own complex history. North African or Moorish ancestry and even Sephardic Jewish lineages all carried across the Atlantic. Here is the part of the Mexican origin story that is often forgotten and sometimes, honestly, even deliberately erased. The African ancestry. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, colonial New Spain, what we now call Mexico, imported more African slaves than the United States. These individuals were brought to work in the sugar plantations, mines, and ports, especially along the Gulf Coast in Veracruz and the Pacific Coast in Guerrero. While the overall average African ancestry in Mexico is pretty low, around 4%, this number is actually a bit misleading. In certain coastal regions, African ancestry can be significantly higher, and in some communities, it is the dominant genetic component. The African contribution is a powerful reminder that Mexico's history is not just a local drama between two groups. It is, in fact, a global story. It connects Mexico not only to Europe and the Americas, but directly to the west coast of Africa, from Senegal to Angola. The genetic map of Mexico reveals a fascinating divide. The north, with its vast arid landscapes, was sparsely populated by nomadic indigenous groups. When the Spanish arrived, they established large ranches and mining operations. The admixture here happened differently. Less dense indigenous populations meant a higher proportion of European DNA in the resulting Mestizo population. But the story doesn't stop at 1492. To truly answer, where do Mexicans come from? We must go back 15,000 years. The indigenous American component itself is a testament to one of the most incredible human migrations in history, the journey across the Bering Strait land bridge, or Beringia. Speaking of unexpected connections across vast distances, here is another piece of surprising information. If someone asked you what the genetic history of Mexico has in common with the genetic history of the Philippines, you'd probably be puzzled. So, what are the true origins of the Mexican people? Well, they are the descendants of the nomadic hunters who crossed Beringia 15,000 years ago, who built the pyramids of Teotihuacan and the cities of the Maya. They are the inheritors of the Spanish conquistadors and settlers who brought a new language, a new religion, and a new genetic code. They carry the often unacknowledged genetic echoes of West Africans who labored and survived in the colonial era. The simple Mestizo label, while socially and culturally important, is a scientific misnomer. It attempts to simplify a reality that is fundamentally complex. It tries to draw a clean line where there is only a beautiful, messy swirl. The truth is that every single culture on Earth has a story, this complex, layers upon layers of migration, conquest, adaptation, and change. The Mexican story just happens to be one of the most dramatic and recent examples of this global human pattern. The people who tell you otherwise, who claim simple, clean origin stories, are either lying or, well, just ignorant. The truth is messy. The truth is complicated, and honestly, the truth is so much more interesting than the myths. So, what surprised you most about the true origins of the Mexican people? Was it the deep, persistent substructure of the indigenous DNA? The stark difference between the North and the South? Or maybe the sheer scope of the forgotten African contribution? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know what hit you hardest. Consider this final thought. The genetic makeup of Mexico is a testament to human resilience, not purity. It is a living, breathing refutation of any ideology that seeks to divide people into simple, distinct groups. Every cell in the body of a modern Mexican carries the memory of 3 continents, 3 great human epochs converging in one place. It is a biological archive of the clash of civilizations, the survival of ancient lineages, and the quiet, persistent power of human connection. This genetic complexity is not a weakness. It is the ultimate strength. It is the reason Mexico has produced such a vibrant, unique, and enduring culture, a culture that absorbs and transforms every influence it encounters. It is the proof that from the most violent historical moments, something new and profoundly human can emerge. When you look at the data, you realize that the Mexican story is the human story, distilled into a single, powerful narrative. It is the story of movement, of mixing, of becoming. It is a challenge to every nation that claims a singular, unbroken line of descent, reminding us that all identity is fluid, layered, and magnificent in its complexity. The future of humanity will not be defined by the lines we draw on maps, but by the genetic and cultural bridges we build between them. The mystery of where Mexicans come from is solved not by finding one source, but by embracing all of them. And that, perhaps, is the most important lesson history has to offer us today. The story of Mexico is the story of us all. And if you're hungry for more origin stories that shatter what you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started because history isn't what they taught you in school.